In this part, we will discuss how do we control events. Of course, we know that we cannot control events, but we can influence how people perceive events. By helping to interpret events, we can influence how events are perceived by people. Specifically, there are two things that we can do in order to influence events and how people perceive those events. First, we need to have a plan. And there are three reasons why we need to have a plan. First, plans helps to structure how we are planning or thinking in developing the project. This provides some certainty to the team of the project. Second, we need to plan for contingencies. We know that in particular situations, in particular unexpected event, we need to know what we will do, what will be our priorities, our goals, or what are the limitations of our project. And third, we need a plan because we need to show other people that you have things under control, even if it is in a symbolic way. Why? Again, because this will create a sense of credibility on the project manager, and this will help to go ahead with the implementation of the project. A plan is a model of change. While there are many models of change in the literature, I like to use Kotler's models of change because it is easy to understand and easy to follow. According to Kotler's model of change, there are 8 steps or stages in any change process. Skipping one of them creates an illusion of speed, but results are not really good. If you can see on the slides, the first 4 steps, they promote change. That is, they promote that the fear of the status quo is greater than the fear of change. So they help to realize change. And the last 4 elements of the Kotler's model help to maintain change. So the first step is to establish a sense of urgency. And this is necessary, otherwise people will be slow to react. And there are many ways of doing this. One conventional way of doing this is looking at what the competition is doing. So we can say, look, if we don't do this in the next 6 months, competition will be better than us in this specific aspect and we will lose market. The second step is to create a guiding coalition. This is necessary to get enough power to lead the project. We need to build a team with high spirits, and for that we need a coalition of stakeholders who will support the project. The third step is to develop a vision, because this helps to direct the implementation of the project. What is the vision, the long-term vision, the long-term benefits of the project beyond the short-term benefits? And of course, next we need to communicate the vision in different ways to the team of the project. Next, we need to create short-term wins. And the idea of creating short-term wins is to show that the project is working. We need to plan for visible performance milestones, and we need to reward and recognize employees that were involved in the achievement of those milestones. So other people who is not still convinced by the project will join in because they will see, this project, it is working. And next, we need to consolidate gains and need to embed those gains into the culture of the organization. And we do this by rewarding people who support the project, who is inside and who is also outside the project. So we were creating a long-term supportive environment for the project. So how we can establish a sense of urgency or create a coalition or develop a vision? In this slide, we detail how you can do that. Please read it on your own time. This slide provides additional details on how to empower broad-based action, how to generate short-term wins, consolidate gains, and embed embed new approaches into the culture of the project. Before moving to the strategies of change, I need to mention that Kotler acknowledges that this model simplifies the change process. We all know that change is always full of surprises. So, what is important is that this 8 steps model helps to achieve successful change if we take it more as a guideline rather than a sequential step by step model. What is important is that we need to perform all the 8 steps. Skipping one step creates an illusion of speed, may never but never produces satisfactory results. The main argument that Kotler makes is that successful change follows a pattern of 3 aspects. First, people need to see problems. That is, problems need to be presented in a compelling way to capture the attention of people of the project or stakeholders in the project. Second, people need to feel the outcomes of the problems related to the project. That is, this triggers in people feelings about the need for change. And third is the actual change process, the change itself that reinforces new behaviors and more change. Kotler's model of change tells us what to do. Provides a plan, a guidelines, as I have already mentioned. Dunphy and model is tell us a strategy for change. That is, how do we implement change? This model is a contingency approach. The argument is that the style of change depends on 2 things. First, on the scale of change, and second, on the reception of organizational members for engaging for the project. On the vertical axis, you can see here that, that the style of change can be either from collaborative to coercive. And on the horizontal axis, you can see the scale of change. The scale of change can be from a small project, that we can call it a fine-tuning, to a large project in which there is total transformation of an organization on the right side of the horizontal axis. The general idea is that the style of change and the scale of change needs to be matched to the needs of the organization. That is why we call this a contingency approach. It depends on the context. What style of implementation I will use depends on the context of the project. This means that effective project managers adopt different management styles to implement projects depending on the specific situation and on the specific context. In the first quadrant, participative evolution, you can see the participative evolution style is when the project, there is collaboration for the project, so most stakeholders and people involved agree with the goals and what and how to do the project. And the project is small, that is involve only a fine-tuning of an organization. This means that there is support and there is time, so we can apply a participative approach. We use this approach when the organization is fit, but it needs only minor adjustments. When the organization is out of fit and time is available and the key interests of groups favor this change process. Next, we can use the forced evolution style of implementing projects when we can see when the project still is a small project, we call it fine-tune, but there is no much support or there's no much agreement regarding what and how of the project. In these terms, we need to use a more coercive approach, and this is called a forced evolution approach. We use forced evolution when the organization is in fit, but needs minor adjustments. Or also, we can use this approach when the organization is out of fit, time is available, but key interest groups oppose the change process. The next style of implementation of change is what we call charismatic transformation. Charismatic transformation, as you can see on the slides, is when there is collaboration, people agree regarding what and how to do of the project, but the project is very large. It involves a whole transformation of the organization. We use it when there is agreement and when there is support of the organization. So in charismatic transformation is used when the organization is out of fit because it needs significant changes, or also when there is little time for extensive participation, but there is support for a radical change. And finally, the last style of implementing projects is what we call dictatorial transformation. Dictatorial transformation is similar than charismatic transformation in terms that the project involves large changes in the whole organization. It's a large project, but there's no support of key people or main stakeholders. So we need to use more coercive approach. This means that dictatorial transformation is used when the organization is out of fit, when there is no time for extensive participation, and when there is no support within the organization for radical change. But radical change is vital for the survival of the organization. This slide details participative evolution and charismatic transformations, strategies of change. Here you can see additional details about the forced evolution and dictatorial transformation strategy of change. Read it on your own time. In order to apply those concepts of implementation of projects, we will use the Jamie Oliver school dinners case in order to discuss how this happens in the real world. We will do this during the workshop and during the Q&A collaborate sessions. Before moving to the practical application of Kotler's model, it is necessary to discuss the relationship between project complexity and models of change. We know that in the case of plan change, there's the assumption that there is one best way to do this change process. Plan change assumes that we can plan what we will do, what tasks and what activities we need to do. But in complex projects, this is not possible to do an exact plan regarding all the tasks that we need to do in order to accomplish the project. But still, we can use plan change because a plan provides guidelines, a path, as I mentioned to you, regarding what we will do. And also, a plan helps to justify the feasibility of a project. This means that in complex projects, we can use the plan models of change, such as the Kotler model, in the diamond model, in cases in which we have lower or medium level of complexity related to each of one of the four axes of the diamond model. In a similar way, we can use a plan models of change, such as the Kotler model, in quadrants 1 and 2 of the 8-feature model. And finally, we can also use a plan models of change in the simple and in the complicated context of the kinetic model, because in this situation that I have mentioned, the level of complexity is either low or is medium, and that is why a plan models of change is likely to be useful. Now, a contingency approach, that is the Dunphy and Stacy model, is different. The contingency approach means, or it is related to those models of complex projects in terms that we can use, for example, a participative evolution strategy or the forced evolution strategy in projects that fall in quadrants 1 and 2 of the 8-feature model. Or also we can use in the diamond model in projects which have lower or medium levels of complexity in each of their four dimensions. However, in the case of projects that are more complex, right, we need to use either charismatic transformation or dictatorial transformation. And I mean, if we are using the 8-feature model, probably this will be the case of quadrants 4 and 3. And if we use in the diamond model, this will be the case of projects in which the largest number of dimensions have medium or high level of complexity. And in the case of Carnegie model, will be in projects in which are located or mapped in the complex or chaos situation. Now, the processual approach, that is the context, content, and process approach of Pettigrew, is different. The processual approach usually can be used more in complex projects and is not very useful in simple projects or in projects that are not complex. The processual approach assumes that change unfolds differently over time and according to the context. So change cannot be seen as a series of linear steps or events, but change, according to the processual approach, is a continuous process where rational, political, and expected and unexpected aspects mix and result in a messy process. So change seems to be a complex interaction or interplay between context, process, and content of change. So in a processual approach, simple linear recipes of change must be challenged because they won't be useful. In processual approaches we use when power and politics are key to the success of the project. Processual approaches need to be used also when in case of long-term projects, because in long-term projects there will be changes in part of the process, in the goals or in the resources or in the support of the project. In processual approaches also we need to question taken for granted assumptions. And finally, in the processual approach, the content of change is likely to change because it depends on the context and on the process. So when we are thinking or when we are looking at complex projects, and a complex project can be, of course, located in the kinetic model in the complex and chaos situation, or in the case of the diamond model when the elements of the diamond model have high levels of complexity or uncertainty in their 4 elements, or in the 8-feature models in quadrants 4 and 3. Now, under the processual approach, change therefore involves continuous change. We need to reinterpret the past in order to redefine future expectations continuously. So, as you can see, I cannot give you a recipe on which model of change you use for which type of complexity of a project. Really, you need to define by yourself depending on the specific situation of your specific project. First, you need to select which of these models of change will be useful for you between the Kotler's model, Dunphy and Stacey on the processual approach, and you need to match that with the models of project uncertainty and project complexity that you are using. In terms that, and when you try to align these two aspects, you will see which model of change is more suitable for which situation of your project. And of course, this also depends on the model that you are using, that in turn depend on the complexity of the project. We will discuss this further along the whole course. As always, if you have any inquiry regarding the aspects that we have discussed in these units, please write it down and we can discuss them during the workshops or the collaborate sessions.